Ben McKee, West Rucker, Go Vols 247, crammed up here in the Neyland Stadium press box because we had some technical difficulties down on the field after Tennessee's big 63-6 win over Akron tonight, Wes. And the big storyline coming out of tonight's game, we'll talk about some stuff on the field, but injuries. Cedric Tillman, Jabari Small, Dylan Sampson. You had a couple guys who did not play, but sounds like Tennessee is optimistic moving forward with Jabari Small and Cedric Tillman as well.
Sounds that way. I mean, and I've said this before, Josh Heupel is an incredibly professional, pleasant guy to deal with, and he for us, he's really easy to deal with. When he talks about injuries, it's not always 1,000% accurate, but I think they feel okay about it. Tillman walked out of the injury tent and told guys he felt okay. So we'll see. And there was no need to put him back in the game tonight, certainly. Although I don't fault them having Tillman in when they did, because it's 21-0. It's not 51-0 at that point. It's the first half. You let your guys go out there and play football. But that, obviously with Florida next week, that's a huge deal. If either one of those guys is dinged up in a serious way, that's not good for Tennessee. Tillman's one of the best receivers in the country, if not best overall players in the country, and they've only got 4 scholarship running backs. So Dylan Sampson also goes down a little bit tonight, so that's also something to look at. That running back room is starting to look a little small.
Yes, and that was what I was about to get to. Assuming Cedric Tillman avoided a major injury, that's going to cost him serious time, which, reading between the tea leaves, Josh Heupel, Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, they all seemed upbeat talking about Tillman after the game. I think that's obviously a great sign. And even with Jabari Small, I saw him down on the sideline kind of cutting up and laughing with the trainers, which seems to be a good sign as well. And like you said, you don't need to put them back into this type of football game.
And Cedric Tillman, he was cutting up a lot throughout the second half with the guys and jumping up around a little bit. And as seriously as he takes football, as hard as he works in this game, and as much as this season means not just for his pride, but let's be real, financially for him. NIL money here is good, but NFL money is really, really good.
And you saw his draft stock going up last week. Some draft experts tweeting about Tillman's draft stock going up.
Yeah, so if he's hurt seriously and it's a big deal, I think he's probably a little bummed out. He may not even be out there in the second half, and they were okay.
Yes, and his teammates. But the bigger concern is, assuming that we are reading into the situation correctly, and Tillman is not lost for a lengthy amount of time, or if at all, I think the bigger issue is the running back room, like you mentioned, because you've got 4 guys. I don't know that they necessarily trust Justin Williams-Thomas a ton at the moment.
Not yet.
So that leaves you with Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, and Dylan Sampson. Jalen Wright looked great tonight. Did not fumble, which is a great step in the right direction after 2 in the first 2 games. But Jabari, who had a great offseason, put on weight. He leaves the game. We kind of touched on him a moment ago. But Dylan Sampson, I think that was kind of swept under the rug because of how his injury happened. It looked like he got rolled up on, and it was right on the sideline, so he was able to secretly kind of roll over onto the sideline.
A little bit of a military crawl over there.
Right, and if those 2 guys are even questionable moving forward, I think that is a huge question mark in general, because that essentially leaves you with 1 healthy running back that they trust. And Jalen Wright looks good, but you need more help than just Jalen Wright if you're going to beat Florida and LSU coming up.
Yeah, and you go back, look at the whole season. People talk about Heupel's offenses, and they've always talked about the passing game, and I get it. That's a bit of a misnomer, though. It's always built around the run. Everything he's ever done as a coordinator and now as a head coach, everywhere he's been, it's been based around the run. And they've put up some prolific rushing. Tennessee went from 85th to 13th nationally from 2 years ago to last year. They run the ball in this offense, and maybe Hooker runs it a little bit more in SEC play, and they don't want to get him banged up now, but that you got 4 scholarship running backs going into this game that are healthy, because Lenith Whitehead's not walking through that door this season. It doesn't take I'm not very good at counting things, but I know that a couple of scholarship healthy running backs, that's not a good situation. They got to fix that, and they got to hope those guys can get healthy, and they got to do whatever they can, put them in bubble wrap. Don't touch them like you do quarterbacks during the week.
Absolutely. The injuries were the storylines coming out of tonight's game. Warren Burrell, D. Williams did not play because of injury, although Heupel said that they were hopeful, just didn't feel like they needed to push them. But we have plenty of more context on tonight's game coming up on the Go Vols 247 podcast. Wes and I are crammed up here, so we're going to go expand.
Everybody was crammed in here tonight, Ben. There were, it was 101,000, 102,000 people sellout for a non-conference game. It's crazy how fired up these people are.
And not just a non-conference game against Akron, a bad Akron team as well. So we're crammed up here in the press box because of some technical difficulties. So we're going to go talk about Joe Milton, Jalen Hyatt, and the rest of the offense, and a really good night for Tennessee football beating down an inferior opponent the way that they're supposed to on the post-game Go Vols 247 podcast. He's Wes Rucker. I'm Ben McKee.